Yep.
Great. Um, Welcome everybody to the GAE-Retired Lunch Bunch. One of the things that we pride ourselves on is to go through and start on time and stop on time. So I will start by reading. If you've been on one of the GAE um, of virtual events, you probably have heard this spiel before, but I will read it and we will move forward. We welcome all public school employees. This event is only for GAE members and GAE staff. Therefore, if you're not a GAE member or part of the GAE staff, please sign in by putting your name, personal email address, cell phone number, and school system in the chat to me, Karen Solheim. I am host for this meeting and a member of the GAE Retired organization. We appreciate your interest in GAE and we hope you will join our organization today by visiting gae.org. Everyone, please note that you need prior permission from the GAE Executive Director or the Executive Committee before recording audio or video of this meeting. And social media posts concerning this meeting shall not contain information about the specific content of the meeting, although the general sharing of GAE and information is encouraged. Please be courteous to other attendees and request their permission before posting photographs containing their images. If you have any questions about social media posting of GAE events, please contact the GAE Executive Committee or the GAE Executive Director. And again, so glad everybody is here today. I hope that you know that our speaker today, Joe Fleming, is the Director of GAE Government Relations and is our chief lobbyist. And if you've ever been down to GAE Day at the Capitol or during the legislative session, you have seen how Joe is respected and knows what he's doing and is definitely an asset to the GAE organization. So, Joe, thank you today for talking about
Sure.
a topic that hopefully we all know about, but we may not. And so we're here to go through and listen. And do you want questions in the chat or what works best for you?
I'm easy. Questions as we go along. Yeah, raise your hand or speak up. That's fine with me.
Sounds good.
So a
Okay.
little bit of background about myself. I am a political creature. I've been interested in politics since I was in elementary school. My grandmother used to steal campaign candidates' yard signs that I liked. I don't know. I was a mutant. We had a man who ran for Congress come and speak to my elementary school, Quincy Collins. He was a prisoner of war in Vietnam. All the other boys were asking questions about what it was like to live on rats and roaches, and I asked him if he's going to run again. So I don't know where this comes from. It kind of spurred an interest in genealogy that I won't bore you with, but I don't have an education background. I was not a teacher, but I am a graduate of public school throughout my education years, as my wife was. Also taught, or rather, was in public schools from grade school on up. Both my kids were raised in public schools. My mother was a school teacher. My father was a school teacher at the university level. So when the opportunity came up to join GAE, I kind of looked at it as an opportunity to pay back those great educators who influenced my life. And it's one of the best things I've ever done. Our members are um, dedicated. They're calling almost by God to do what they're doing, and they do it bravely and without tire, which brings us to the subject today. And this is one of the most important priorities for GAE. School districts in the state of Georgia can avoid compliance with state law basically by asking the state school board for it. And the state school board, to my knowledge, has never turned down any request to be relieved of the duty to comply with state law. I'm going to try to get a PowerPoint up here.
While you're doing that, Joe, we've had
Yeah,
somebody recently enter our participant list,
okay.
known only to me as Zoom user. So if you are a Zoom user, could you please change your name, put it in the chat, or tell me who you are? And then we also have an iPhone 2 user who just has joined us. So if both of these people could let me know who they are, that would be wonderful.
Can you see my PowerPoint, Karen?
I can. It even says GA Retired Lunch Bunch. This is pretty
Yeah,
cool.
pretty amazing. So
Yeah.
what we're talking about is generally referred to are waivers. So Title 20 of the Georgia Code of Laws basically deals with public education. And a school district is eligible to have a waiver from anything in Title 20 governing public education, except those that are related to, say, OSHA type safety issues or civil rights. So think of a rule or a policy in your school that can go away tomorrow, and it does. And the result is a harmful situation for our educators and for our students. So school district waivers are basically exemptions for public schools and state charter schools to avoid compliance with these state laws, rules, regulations, and standards. Why the General Assembly would have created such a situation like this? Because they're basically giving local school districts veto power over their actions. We have an education committee in both the Senate and the House, and they labor diligently to write new laws, hopefully to improve the work environment for educators and to benefit our students. They do that. They pass both chambers. They go to the governor. They get signed into law. And then all of a sudden, a school district can say, we really don't want to follow that law. And so they tell the school board they don't plan to follow that law. And the school board de facto gives them a waiver so they don't have to. I trust my slides are changing as I'm talking. Um,
They are.
Thank you. So, what are some examples of waivers in schools today? Class size. To me, this is the one I use most common because people get it and understand it. We have laws in the state of Georgia that regulate the maximum number of students that can be in our classes. They vary based on grade, they vary based on subject matter. For example, of course, band classes can have more students than a math class. They're embodied in Department of Education regulation. There are waivers so that the state or the school district does not have to follow the state minimum salary requirements for educators. So let's say the state of Georgia has a minimum salary schedule for educators of $39,000. School districts don't have to comply with that when they have a waiver. They can pay if they can get candidates $34,000 if they want. There is law in Georgia that requires states to hire, or sorry, school districts to only hire certified teachers. But school districts have waivers from that, and they can hire teachers who are not certified. Fair dismissal, which gives you basically due process should anything happen in your career where you're charged or alleged to create some issue or impropriety. You don't have that due process in school districts that have a waiver for fair dismissal. Duty-free lunch and planning period times. We have laws on the books in Georgia that are there to give you a break at lunch, eat if you want, grade papers if you want, go to the bathroom if you want, We also have a law that passed 2 years ago that requires one period of uninterrupted planning time, so that you don't have to take all your work home with you, and you can plan for your next class or for your next examination or whatever. But there are active waivers that school districts have been given, so they don't have to do that. I think that's problematic. But it's not just those. Like I said before, anything in Title 20 of Georgia law governing public schools can be waived. And there are waivers now today that exempt school districts from um, provisions for gifted students, for early intervention, English as a second language, EIP, and then there's the blanket cast or blanket coverage that any others identified by the local school board and approved by the state board. So that tells me that anything in Georgia's law regarding public education can and probably is being waived by school districts. Okay. Any questions so far? Now,
I'll ask one. Whose
yeah,
bright idea was this?
well, I'm getting to that. Yeah, I think
Okay.
that's coming up. But it's a terrible situation. And I think it's creating learning hardships for our students, difficulties for our teachers. It's subverting the aims of public education. So, yeah, a lot of problems with this. How did we get here, Karen? In 2008, when Sonny Perdue was governor, there was a recession going on. It was pretty severe. I remember um, the value of our house plummeted like 35% in a couple of year period. It was a very, very difficult time. So, I get it. The governor sought to give school districts some relief. So they would have waivers to shift money around from one priority to another. And that's what they did. These waivers were always meant to be temporary. In fact, they were scheduled to expire in 2010. But in 2015, I don't know who it was, but somebody had the great idea of, oh, let's give them flexibility all the time. So they created a system of school districts, state charter school districts, strategic waiver school systems, and then a third category called traditional schools. And waivers were granted then, not for financial flexibility, but in exchange for improvements in student learning. And as the law says, the goal for each waiver and variance shall be improvement of student performance. That's not happening today. This is a map of where we have school districts. And doing a little research this morning, this map is inaccurate. Every school district in Georgia, state charter schools or strategic waiver systems, now have waivers in place for some of the laws in Title 20. So you see down here, purple in Southwest Georgia, Webster County, they now have waivers. There was another school district up in Gwinnett County, Beaufort City Schools had no waivers. Now they have waivers. So automatically, state charter school systems have waivers, and now uh, those that are strategic waiver systems, all of them have waivers because they've asked to be given those waivers. So they're everywhere. You think about problems that you have or frustrations you have in your school, I bet you it can be traced back to waivers. Um, and we'll discuss some more of those waivers in just a second.
Trick has his hand up.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Let me unmute. Thank you for doing this. This is near and dear to my heart.
Yep.
Joe, one thing that you mentioned that they could waive, like EIPs, which goes down to civil rights.
Right.
I mean, how can you legally get away with this, especially when it comes down to civil rights?
No, I think you're right. And frankly, if somebody challenged a school district that had a waiver for EIP, they would lose. But nobody's come forward to do that yet that I'm aware of. So, it's law until it's not law, and it's only not law when school districts have waivers or a court rules that way. But yeah, very good question. So I mentioned that waivers initially were given for financial flexibility. Under the law passed in 2015, they're now given in exchange for proof of academic improvement. But it is such a low standard to meet that these school districts will probably never lose their waivers. If they just show improvement in graduations in their schools by one kid, that waiver is still in effect. Even if they drop in test scores, even if they drop in state standardized tests or advanced placement or baccalaureate participation, the school could have collapsed academically. But if they just show improvement in one of these four areas, their waivers are valid. But the fact is, it's almost impossible to make a argument that waivers in any way benefit students. I mean, does the student benefit by a class size of 40? No, of course they don't. And the teacher doesn't either. But guess who does benefit? The finance office at the central office and the state. We talk a lot about teacher salaries too. I don't know if you guys know this, but we are now behind South Carolina, Alabama, Mississippi, Florida, if I didn't mention that, in starting salaries. Okay. There's a minimum state salaries schedule. You have to pay this amount of money for starting teachers. And it's below those four states and maybe North Carolina too. I can't remember. But school systems can waive that. So as I said earlier, they could pay 34,000 if the market will allow it. The good news, I guess, in a way, kind of a sad way, is that the shortage of educators, certified educators in particular, has created a demand. But should that economic equation change, we could see school districts saying, no, we're cutting you, we're cutting our starting salaries down. Anyway, back to this side. So if they're given a waiver by the state school district, and again, they always are, they just have to show improvement in one of these four areas. They could, as I said earlier, collapse academically, but have one more kid in an advanced placement class, and they're eligible to continue their waiver.
Joe, is this accountability we go back to the last slide, is the accountability then on a yearly basis? And the waiver just rolls over, or is it for an extended period of time? Do you know?
Yeah, so the school districts that seek waivers have to sign a contract with the Department of Education, and that contract generally is 5 years. So, in that 5 year interim, like I said, academic learning could have collapsed. They've not met these four standards, but it would be 5 years before they have to get their numbers up. And in fact, the State Department recently extended all waivers. So most are now on a 5 year schedule. There were a couple that were shorter term, but yeah, 5 years is about right.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Any other questions right now?
Yes. Miss Kim has raised her hand.
Hello,
Yes,
Ms. Kim.
hi. Yes, so I have a question regarding the waivers. So you mentioned there were school district waiver in terms of hiring teacher, the certified teacher, and then there also waiver you mentioned regarding the test, the standardized test. Can you differentiate the two differences between those waivers?
Well, tell me the first part again. I'm sorry.
So the first waiver you mentioned that that the school district they can waive when they hire a teacher if the teachers are not certified.
Right, right, right.
Yeah, so
So I don't know that this is being used widespreadly right now because of the demand for teachers, but school districts can and hire if they have a waiver for it, non-certified teachers. And I'll be honest with you, we got a legislative session coming up in January of 2026. You may have read or know that the Trump administration has cut staff at the U.S. Department of Education by 50%. They've cut funding. They anticipate more cuts in funding. And Georgia relies on that funding. We have school districts in Georgia, for example, Macon County, Georgia. 40% of their school district budget comes from federal dollars. So when you have a situation like that, um, the Georgia General Assembly has a couple of options. They can continue the programs that have been cut and fund them appropriately. I'm very worried they will do the opposite. They will say, nothing we can do. We can't afford it. We're not going to continue to fund that program. And or we may, I don't know, cut teacher salaries or change things, but the money may not be there this year, and that would force, in a way, school districts to hire non-certified teachers, which I think is a grave mistake. Standardized test scores, yeah. So I mean, they're mandated in state law. And the governor a couple of years ago actually reduced the number of standardized tests, which was, I think, warmly received by most of our members. As Lisa Morgan, our president, often says, students are more than a test score. But school districts can go off campus, go off the reservation, whatever you want to say, and use other type standardized tests than those that are recommended by the Department of Education, or potentially be relieved of offering them at all. I guess the problem there is that many of the Georgia colleges and universities require some sort of standardized test for enrollment. But I don't know if that answered your question. I hope it does.
yes, it does. Well, I'm just curious, you mentioned that the budget cut.
Yes.
I'm just curious, what are the reason behind, because when you cut the budget, you have you know, to have valid reason behind
Yeah.
this plan. Because I'm just curious, because I'm a new, I'm new to the field, but I've learned, it's very, very hard job. And I'm just curious if,
Where are you, Miss Kim?
oh, I'm in Georgia. I live in Gwinnett County.
Okay.
Yes, so in Duluth, yes.
So kind of get off on a little bit of a tangent. I'm very, very concerned about 2026 and when the lawmakers get together, because they will be facing limited federal dollars for not only public education, but for other benefits, for SNAP benefits, for healthcare benefits and programs. And it's going to put an enormous strain on the legislators. The problem with the way our legislature is constructed right now politically is that I think the Republicans in charge will say, yeah, we'll cut that program. We don't have the money or the will to fund it. There also is, one of the big issues for us also is private school vouchers, where taxpayer dollars go to help middle and upper class families pay for their kids' private school. That passed into law in Georgia a year ago. It's being implemented this year. But on top of that, the federal government has passed a $27 billion tax credit that is a write-off on your federal income tax. And that requires a vote of the states to opt into. So we have 4 voucher bills from last year that are eligible for consideration this year, but we know pretty much that Georgia will vote to opt into this tax credit for private school vouchers, which private school vouchers inherently harm the kids left behind in public school. They're left with less funding, less attention. They're harder to educate. They're more expensive to educate. So this session is fraught with danger. But yeah, and you asked why would they cut federal funding for public education? Well, President Trump has said outright he wants to eliminate the Department of Education. I mean, just shut it down. But imagine your school, or I tell legislators, imagine the General Assembly, if you had 50% less staff to do your job, to help you do your job. You couldn't. You couldn't do it. I mean, I guess you could do it, but you wouldn't do it well, that's for sure. So we're facing a situation where the U.S. Department has 50% today, less than they did in January on staff. So that to me is a clarion call to pay attention, get involved. And when we talk about waivers, they do have to go to the local school board for a vote. And it's important for all of our members to stay informed about what their school board is doing, to engage them, to testify against things like this. Because the frustration for me with waivers is, and I had a 2-hour conversation with a legislator yesterday, explaining to them, because it doesn't make sense in your brain why a local school district could override the governor or the General Assembly. And so explain to them the impact of waivers and how it actually does nothing to improve academic standards or learning achievement, but it harms students and it makes educators' life more difficult, much more difficult. So these waivers, when they're asked for, there has to be a hearing of the local school board. So you need to know what's going on and what's on the agenda for your local school board. And you need to be there with your colleagues telling them why things like this are a bad idea. Once it gets out of the local school board, it's almost impossible to stop. So anyway, preachifying there a little bit.
Okay. So the reason behind the waivers for the schools to hire a non-certified is because that's, that ways they pay a little bit less than certified because of the budget cuts.
Yeah, I think that's right. They use the term flexibility, that the waivers give the school system flexibility.
Yeah.
Yeah, but to me, it's not flexibility. If the state sends you $1 million to your school district for salaries, it should be spent on salaries.
Right.
Okay, so we've had pay raises in the last several years, for which we're appreciative of. Unfortunately, inflation has kind of eaten away much of those pay raises. But a school district could take the money that was budgeted by the General Assembly and spend it on anything else they want. The only reason they're not doing that, in my opinion, kind of cynically, I guess, is that they know they'd face a backlash, not only from educators, but from parents too. But they could literally take money sent down by the state for salaries and spend it on landscaping at the central office. That's the reality, and that's the danger of waivers. So. Thank you for your question.
Thank you so much.
And Joe, tangential to this, you mentioned you'd had a conversation with a legislator yesterday. Do they not just think you're talking Greek when you tell them that the waiver system is in place?
Yes, I mean, almost literally, yeah. Um, the legislator I was talking to yesterday serves on the House Education Committee, and she had no idea about waivers, how they work, why they're there, and the damage they do. And we have this problem with our own members. It doesn't make sense in your brain or to understand the logic of waivers. If they're willing to sit through the presentation and listen to you, they get it, but they're incredulous. So we've been working on this for 3 years at least, and gosh, Karen, maybe 25 years before that. And we still have difficulty getting people to understand what waivers are, why they're bad. And that's one of the reasons I'm really glad to be here today, is because I need you guys as missionaries talking this up, explain to people what waivers are, why they're dangerous, and why they're not good for our kids, for sure. And we're making progress, and we know we're making progress because we now see education bills coming out of the committees at the legislature that say this may not be waived. So we know that there's more recognition that there are waivers. A couple of years ago, Demetrius Douglas, state representative, former UGA football player, Karen, passed a bill to require physical education in our schools, which is something I think we've been a long time advocate for. But they refuse to accept language on the bill that says this cannot be waived. And I was looking at DeKalb County with this legislator that I mentioned earlier. DeKalb County has a waiver. They don't have to offer physical education. And I think the way I read it, they may not have to offer health education either. So it's the big secret that nobody knows about. That's one of the reasons our schools are being systematically destroyed. As I mentioned, all charter systems automatically get a waiver from anything in Title 20 public education law. There's a few of them there. I talked about fair dismissal before. These school districts have waived fair dismissal. So, if they want to get rid of you, they don't have to give you due process to explain, present evidence. They can fire you. Georgia is a right to work state, which is kind of a misnomer, but it basically means that if I'm an employer, I can fire you for any reason at any time. If I don't like Karen Solheim's hairstyle, she can be gone, so long as it doesn't conflict with federal civil rights laws. But you really, in Georgia, don't need a reason to fire somebody. You don't have to go and prove that you are justified in firing somebody. And that's essentially what waivers mean for school districts. Teachers have had, I don't think they do in Georgia anymore, tenure. But fair dismissal at least gave some sort of, like I said, due process. So these are some school districts where if they want to get you out, they can get you out pretty easily. So in 2024, and the year before that, and I think the year before that, we've had bills to repeal waivers. In 2024, Nabila Islam from Gwinnett County offered a bill that we helped draft that would prevent waivers for class sizes, health and physical education, expenditure controls, which is the broad name for I'm taking money for one purpose and using it for another. That's what the expenditure control waiver is about. Certification requirements we talked about, salary schedule, duty-free lunch, and fair dismissal. But as alluded to before, we found great frustration in explaining to legislators, and you almost have to do this one by one, what waivers are, why they're there, what they do, why they're harmful. And we didn't make as much progress as we wanted to. Well, I kind of missed the slide here somewhere. So in 2025, this past session, we thought the best way to go would be to create a study committee to look at waivers, because that would create broader awareness of the waivers and draw attention to some of those that are most problematic. So we actually got a bill passed this year, SB 476, by Senator Sonia Halpern from Atlanta, that would create a study committee on waivers. That bill passed without an objection in the state Senate. So there should have been a study committee this summer operating to look at waivers. However, Lieutenant Governor Burt Jones refused to appoint members to the committee, so the committee has never met, is not funded, and won't happen. But I think this is a strategy we will go for again next year. Let's study it. Let the advocates for, quote, flexibility speak up. Let us speak up about the problems with waivers. Let's put some sunshine on this issue and talk about the impacts. So we will be back with that study committee proposal in 2026. Okay, this is a short list. These are school districts that have not waived on the left column the salary schedule, and on the right side certification. So there are only 6 school districts in Georgia that have not said that they wish to, or if needed to, would pay educators less than the state salary schedule minimum. And there's only one county that has not waived teacher certification. That's DeKalb County. So DeKalb remains true to the law, and they will only hire certified educators. Everyone else, all 180 school districts in Georgia, have waivers, so they don't have to comply with that. That's really troubling. So you may know that in earlier grades, teachers are to be given a duty-free lunch period where they can eat, they can call their kids, make sure everything's okay. They can plan for the next class, grade test, whatever. These are the only school districts in Georgia that have not waived duty-free lunch or planning time. And these are two separate things. Duty-free lunch affects primarily early education. Planning time affects all grades, K through 8, where an educator is supposed to have a academic period time free to plan, grade tests, write assignments. And these are the only school districts in Georgia that have not waived that. So if your school district is not on this list, you don't have either duty-free lunch or planning time. Again, this is a bill that we championed, the planning time bill, passed 2 years ago. Thought it was a great idea. Had been law previously in Georgia. Given the demands on our educators, it seemed necessary, but they refused to accept language that it could not be waived. So we have a situation like in Cobb County where they claim they comply with the law by offering planning time for educators. But their planning time is 7:45 a.m. to 8:15 a.m. before kids arrive at school. We don't think that matches with the spirit or intention of the law, which was a planning period during the school day, where teachers would have time to do, prepare for their job. So, that's something I wish we could undo right away. But if we didn't have waivers, we wouldn't have to worry about it. Karen, that's kind of where we are on waivers. It continues to be a huge priority for us. And I think the more our members find out about it, the more they'll be galvanized to talk to their colleagues at least about the impact of waivers, if not their school board members or legislators. And we're continuing to work at the Capitol to create more awareness and um, um, focus on the bad side of waivers. So,
As somebody put in the chat, great information, Joe. And how do you feel about sharing um either a PDF or your PowerPoint with me, and I'll send it out to
yeah,
people on the Zoom?
yeah, I'm fine
Okay.
with that.
Okay. And so it's like kind of where to start in this quagmire. What's the number one thing, I guess, maybe that active members can do, and what's the number one thing that retired members can
Yeah.
do to get the word out? Or, yeah.
Well, so we're the Georgia Association of Educators. I don't have the staff to cover 180 school district meetings. If there's one thing I would wish for, and it's not just on waivers, but a bunch of things, is greater member involvement with their local school board. Because we've seen where that kind of involvement pays off. Clark County, Karen, you probably know more about it than I do, but you and Jesse and others got them to change their rules on fair dismissal so that teachers now do have due process in Clark County. So we see examples where you know creating relationships with legislators makes a difference, and it could, and I would hope that it creates this groundswell of support for. I heard about this waiver thing from one of my educators in my district. What is this? What is this? This doesn't make sense. Um, so that, you know, we can lay the groundwork for making holistic changes. So being more involved in your local is one thing I can't do. There's just not enough bandwidth to do 180 school districts in Georgia, but you guys can by showing up at the meetings. They post their agendas in advance, so you know what's coming up. There's public comment at many of them, and the opportunity to build those relationships where you can say, you know, here's an idea, okay, um, we've got a great group in Catoosa County, and they're working very closely with their school board because a legislator passed a bill that requires them to have 3 audits a year. So they are engaging their school board members um, to do that, and they're making a difference. We'll see what the result is, but Karen, I would just say engagement on that level.
And just like when we lobby our legislators, Joe, I believe we just shouldn't show up and complain the first time we meet
Yeah.
somebody and try and forge these relationships. So having worked in 2 small locals, just building those relationships in warm, fuzzy, win-win
Mhm.
kinds of activities like American Education Week or National Teacher Day, School Board Appreciation Week is helpful. So
Yeah. And we
Patrick,
will
you have
do our
go.
best to arm you with the information you need. We write about federal affairs and the cuts in public education up in Washington, D.C. Every day of the session, we write to our members about what happened that day, what's coming up. Uh, so I hope we're providing the information. Just need people to act on it, and you guys do, and especially retired. When we were fighting vouchers, and we beat vouchers 2 years ago with 16 or 17 Republicans voting with us, that didn't happen because I happen to know all these guys. It may have helped a little bit, but it happened because the membership wrote, called, visited their legislators and said, this is a problem. So it does matter. We've been working on an issue also for the last 3 years, and that's retirement benefits for our school bus drivers, cafeteria workers, and custodians, maintenance personnel. They're not under the teachers' retirement system. They have a separate state pension plan called the Public School Employees Retirement System. 3 years ago, we started working on improving their benefits, which, by the way, average $290 a month. And I don't know about you guys, but when my kids were in school, the bus was there before the sun went up. The bus was there when the sun went down. I don't know how the heck you expect them to have another job that would pay any sort of meaningful retirement benefits. And at least 24 school districts in Georgia are not contributing to Social Security for these workers. So, wow, we are really not doing what's right here. So we got on it. We got a bill passed. At the time, the chairman of the Senate Retirement Committee, we approached him, talked to him about it. He agreed to hold a hearing. Unfortunately, he scheduled it for like 9 a.m. on Friday morning. None of our affected members could be there. So we asked him for another one on a Saturday. He did so 7 days before Christmas in Columbus, Georgia. Our members showed out. I think there were 60 or so members there, two state senators, but by attaching a story to a face and explaining the implications, those two senators left motivated and wanting to help, and frankly, kind of angry at their school districts for not doing more for these people. So we got a bill to actually eliminate a cap that was in state law that basically forever limited how much they could receive in retirement. So that cap is gone now. Very grateful for that. Part of these budget cuts that would come from Washington are going to impact public education. And unfortunately, I hope it doesn't, but it may disrupt our effort to continue to improve retirement benefits for school bus drivers, cafeteria workers, et cetera. But yeah, just goes to show that your membership matters and your voice matters. It really does. They'll listen to me, talk to them, but to have a educator who's a constituent of theirs in their district talking to them respectfully and appreciatively makes a huge, huge difference.
Thanks, Joe. Patrick, you have a question?
I do. Joe, the reason why I wanted this lunch bunch was because when I was attending one of your sessions at our training in the fall, there were so many members did not know exactly what strategic waivers were about.
Right. Yeah.
And I felt like it was knowledge is the biggest power, and I really hope that we do more of these kind of things, because especially with Trump's horrible, terrible, no good, very bad bill, how it's going to affect, along with the waivers, which really destroy public education. So, I mean, I hope we do more of these. The question I have is, are certain organizations like, maybe you can fill in more, like the Reason Foundation, the Bro Foundation, all these foundations are real far right wing who want to destroy public ed, and I think they're behind Trump's wanting to destroy Department of Education. What can you share about those organizations and how they are affecting public education?
Okay, so there are many national groups whose sole purpose to exist is the promotion of vouchers. Arizona is headquartered to some of them. I don't know if, Patrick, you remember the name Alicia Searcy. She's back in Georgia. She's a Democrat who champions vouchers and charter schools. She's back in Georgia. I think it was in the paper today announcing a new organization that she's found. But there are many, many special interest groups out there whose goal is to destroy public education and to promote vouchers. And they're the reason, in part, that the voucher bill in Georgia passed, albeit by only one vote. They're kind of in a humiliated position in Georgia, though. Right now, the number of families that have signed up for private school vouchers is less than they budgeted for. Poking a hole in their argument that these are super popular, everybody wants one. well, who doesn't like free money? When you're paying for another family's private school education. But they also obviously heavily influence the $27 billion income tax credit in Washington. Uh, I say they're a little bit humiliated in Georgia because 2 years ago they lost. I mentioned that, we were able to persuade 16 or 17 Republicans to join us in voting against vouchers. Georgia is a red state. It is a Republican state. It is in the Republican Party platform that vouchers are good. So to get those 16 or 17 to sign on board was huge. And in almost every other red Republican state, vouchers pass easily. But because of our membership and some good common sense arguments, we were able to beat it. Then we fell one vote short last year when they brought it up again, although it was heavily watered down. But yeah, those groups are active. They're in Georgia. They spend millions of dollars in Georgia, propping up, quote, local organizations that share their values. And they're a force at the Capitol, for sure. They got entree into, Speaker's office, Lieutenant Governor's office.
Thank you, Joe, for that, and thank you for all your information. I'm going to do some screen sharing here, hopefully a minute. And if you'll send me your PowerPoint, I'll go through and send it out to the attendees for today.
Yeah.
This information, that part of what Joe has shared, is somewhat readily accessible on the Georgia DOE website. And so if you just Google or whatever your search engine is and vouchers, etc., it should bring you to this page on district flexibility. Gives the historical background that Joe went over, an overview, and you can actually go into each of these under charter school and strategic waiver and see the contract that your school system has signed.
Hey,
Or,
Karen.
yeah, go.
So when I was talking to this legislator, we actually went to this very webpage, pulled up DeKalb County, her county. Make sure you go to the very bottom because there's often an appendix that lists the specific waivers they have. The first 10 pages are basically just template contract language. So don't get discouraged. Keep scrolling down and you'll get a list of the specific waivers your district has.
Perfect. So knowledge is power, I think, as Patrick said earlier. So please go through, excuse me, and avail yourself and know what's happening in the county in which you live, the county in which you work, etc. So I'm going to move us just to knowing some other things that are happening with GAE and GAE-Retired. And you signed up hopefully for this event today through a platform called Mobilize. And if you just put in mobilize.us/GAE, it's going to take you to all the GAE virtual events. So this is a great, to me, an easy way to see what's happening virtually. The Professional Development Committee is doing a TEACS presentation next week. And then the following Saturday, GACE workshop. Lisa and Michael are doing Rights at Night towards the end of the month. Our next GAE Retired Lunch Munch will be the State of the Union from our own GAE President Lisa Morgan. We have some upcoming GAE Retired informational meetings. And then I want to highlight also our pre-retirement seminars. These are open to members and non-members. GAE Vice President Tony Smith does a great job with these. We do 4 a year. They are on Saturdays, hopefully, so more people can attend. 3 hours, 9 to noon, again via Zoom. We cover a wealth of topics here, and again, members and non-members, and if you're at all within 5 years of retirement, start knowing more about what's involved in retirement and literally getting or figuratively getting your ducks in a row. So wanted to point that out. Also, if you are a GAE retired member, you're going through and getting the In the Loop publication that got sent last night. And this has a wealth of information, including our TRS monitoring committee chair, Lisa Underwood, does a great job of putting together a report for the bi-monthly TRS meetings, which again are held on Wednesday mornings at 10:30 when a lot of active members are working. So read the report. TRS is in fine shape. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. And if you're not going through and being a retired member at this point in time, you'll want to make sure you're signed up to get the GAE Voices. And when you scroll through all the information here, again, I really believe knowledge is power, and you'll see some things repeated, and that's wonderful. But even in this, GAE Retired has a section at the bottom. And so we link all our information here so you can go through and see what's going on with the retired organization. I would be remiss if I didn't share that now, if you're thinking about joining as a retired member, you're going, I'm not retired, I want to be. Now is a good time to do it in September, because you get to divide the lifetime membership fee. It's $450 for active and $270 for ESPs by 12 and make payments for 12 months over the course of the GAE membership year. So again, I'll send you links to all of this. And if you have any questions about membership, you can there'll be information to whom to reach out. And the only other thing that I want to put on your radar, I hope it is here, is GAE Retired. Oh, I might not have put it in here. Sorry, I'm going to stop sharing. GAE is going to have our fall member conference in the Metro Atlanta area, October 25th and 26th. So this information will be in GAE communications vehicles. We were calling it a leadership conference, and I thought about it, and I didn't want people to say, oh, I'm not coming because I'm not a GAE leader. Everybody's a GAE leader. So we've changed it to fall membership conference, again, October 25, 26, Metro Atlanta area. So watch GAE communications about that. And if you have any questions or concerns, I'll put my email in the chat, my phone number, reach out to me. And thank you so much for being here today. You could have gone through and done several other things with your lunch hour, and you chose not to. And I hope this information always just incenses me about strategic waivers, because I go through and I think that if I were a legislator and I've enacted a law and voted for something, and then somebody else can just go through and say, oh, no matter what you passed, we're going to go through and waive this, I would be furious on some level. So I think our being a squeaky wheel and an active voice is what we need to do at this point in time. So thank you. I hope you felt that this was a good use of your time. Thank you for being a GAE member. Thank you for what you do for public education. And with that, I think we're 30 seconds away from 12:30, and I hope you'll join us for upcoming GAE events, either virtually or in person, and have a great day. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Bye, everybody.
Goodbye.
Oh, bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great job, Karen, as usual.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Thank you, everybody.
This is
Bye-bye.
Bowden. Bye-bye. Thank you.
That's
Bye.
great information.